My name's Harv Nagra. This is a recording of the presentation I delivered in person at the Agency Hackers Built to Withstand event, and recording this for anyone that was unable to attend, and in case you wanted to see it again. So, my name's Harv. I'm an ex in-house agency operations director. I was group operations director at a pan-European agency that was headquartered in the UK with entities in France and Switzerland. Hopefully, some of you know that I'm host of the Handbook, the operations podcast. And I'm head of brand comms at a platform called Scoro. This is a professional services automation platform. And it was a platform that I had brought in at my past agency that completely changed the way we were working and was a big part of our maturity journey. And I loved it so much, in fact, that I left the agency and my operations role and started working with Scoro about a year and a half ago. So, to set some context, typically my audience when I'm speaking at events or through the content I create is agencies and consultancies, which are professional services businesses. I know a lot of us often don't think about ourselves that way as professional services businesses, but really what that means that we're in the business of selling time and expertise. And really quickly, Scoro is again a professional services automation platform. So it means it's designed for businesses like yours. I'm going to tell you a bit more about that in brief later in the presentation. But to kick off the agenda for this session, we're going to look at why we can't wing it anymore. And for those of you that were at the Agency Hackers Built to Withstand event, know that the entire theme of the event was really about being resilient in the face of pressures that we're all under. Next, we're going to look at maturity and control. What does that look like? And then we're going to take a peek at the future of operations, automation, and AI, and hopefully stuff that we can all feel really excited about. Okay, but let's kick off with this idea of resilience and why we can't wing it anymore. Well, as I see it, there's a few big reasons for that. Okay, and the first one, well, let's start with the tantrums and chaos. Somebody famously said, tariffs is the most beautiful word in the English language. So I can't say that I necessarily agree. But anyway, when the new Trump administration came into office earlier in 2025, I think a lot of us overseas thought we were exempt. A lot of us in kind of professional services businesses like agencies and consultancies thought we were exempt. But the reality is, especially for those of us that are in kind of multi entity organizations, is that the tariffs impacted our customers, the brands that have the products that need the expertise of an agency or a consultancy, right? So if those brands are impacted, their budgets get tighter or put on hold. And obviously that has a knock-on effect on the professional services businesses that serve them. So budgets got tighter, things got put on hold, the market was a bit spooked, right? So of course that puts negative pressure on our pipelines. The next big challenge, and I think this is a global thing, but I'm based here in the UK. So looking at that context, is that the economy has been puttering along for far too long. And if you are watching this and listening to this from further afield, you might recognize similar patterns. But we've gone in the UK from Brexit to COVID to a disastrous mini budget, if you know what that means, and at least six prime ministers in 9 years, right? And the economy is simply not as buoyant as we'd like it to be. On top of that, we've got things like the tariffs and the chaos and the uncertainty that comes with that. And then there's just global unrest and war, which is again impacting our clients and impacting the global economy. So again, budget's tighter and not business not flowing as much as we'd like. And of course, the big story that we can't ignore from the past few years is AI, right? It's hard to believe that GPT, at the time I'm recording this, is less than 3 years old. November 30th is when it was released to the public in 2022. It's hard to imagine how much has changed over the past few years in terms of the way we work, in the way we even seek advice in our personal lives, right? This has been absolutely transformative. There's also a lot of big questions in terms of what this means for the future of work. There's a lot of dramatized headlines, right, saying that we're all going to be out of jobs in a few years, or all of our businesses are going to be not necessary in a few years. Agencies and consultancies will have less purpose in a few years because everything will be able to be done through AI. I don't know if that's likely to happen, but that those are the kinds of things that we hear. And on top of that, there's always these questions around what this means for big agencies in the future. Are the smaller agencies going to become so much more productive and effective and able to do so much more that the big agencies are under a lot of pressure and there's no room for them anymore? I've also heard the opposite, that small agencies are going to go extinct, and what's going to be left are the big agency groups. I don't know what the answers to any of these questions are going to be, but the point is that our business models and methodologies are under pressure for reinvention, and margins are being impacted as well. Okay, so those are some of the reasons we can't wing it anymore. Well, things might have been good in the past, and we might have been able to rely on referrals and healthy margins. We can't rely on those things. It's not a guarantee any longer. So we need to be more in control of our businesses than ever before, and we need to be able to make decisions based on data, not gut feel, not on instinct, not on wishful thinking. It's just not the way to survive in the face of all these challenges that I've just mentioned. So that takes us to the next part of my presentation around maturity and control. Okay. So for those of you that know me and follow me or listen to the podcast, you'll know that I talk about business maturity a lot. And I think it's a super important concept. And it gives a lot of clarity in terms of understanding how your business is operating today and what you should be aspiring towards, right? Business maturity models tend to have 5 stages. They tend to have very clunky names. So I've kind of trashed those and come up with some of my own, which I believe makes it a little bit easier to understand. Okay. So on the left, we have stage one and stage two, which are generally very chaotic states of being. People are making stuff up as they go. There's no documented process or consistency. And there's very little visibility on how your business is performing. Okay. On the other end, stage four and five, you are data driven. So you do have that control and visibility, right? Now, a quick note before we go on. I just wanted to flag that business maturity has nothing to do with your headcount size, nothing to do with your revenues, and it has nothing to do even with how long you've been in business. I know businesses that are over 10 years old that are unfortunately still operating in a very chaotic kind of way, right? It's not ideal and it's not where you want to be. Let's just see how this kind of falls out in terms of percentages of businesses in each of these stages. So you might be surprised to see that 55% of all businesses are stuck in those chaotic 2 stages. Okay. So they're very much making stuff up as they go with very little visibility on their performance. On the other end, those data driven stages, only 20% of all professional services businesses get to that stage. Okay. So not very many of us. What I wanted to do in the next few slides is show you how reporting needs tend to evolve as you grow and mature. So on one axis, we have maturity increasing, and on the other, we have head counts. Okay, so let's take a look. At the earlier, lower end of maturity, reporting is very much based on survival and cash. You tend to be looking at your bank balance, and hopefully you're monitoring your outstanding and incoming payments, right? You're making sure you can pay salaries next month. There's not a lot of focus on reporting, and probably you often don't even know what you should be reporting and measuring. So it's not an ideal state to stay in for long. We level up a bit, and your reporting tends to become very project based. You've acquired more clients, you've got bigger projects and more complex projects, more deliverables, and your concern becomes focused on delivering or getting things done at the standards you've promised your clients. You don't want to let them down. So you might be measuring, are we delivering on time? Are we hitting the deadlines? Are we delivering on spec? And the thing is, you might be delivering to spec, you might be hitting your deadlines, but are you delivering to the costs that you had estimated, right? How are you doing against the budgets? And at this stage of maturity, that tends not to be very robust. So you might not have any visibility on that at all. We're going to level up a bit. And this is where the mindset starts to shift, right? You're no longer asking, did we finish it? But was it profitable? Was it worth it? So, why do you become focused on project profitability? I mean, if things were just like super buoyant and the economy was doing great and loads of business flying in and we're just rolling in money, we wouldn't have to worry about this. But the thing is, something tends to happen to trigger the realization that you need to start looking at your profitability. Either things like the economy and the situations like I described, the challenges, impact our businesses. Pipelines become shallow, so we know that we have to be really careful with how we're spending our money and where our time is going. Or we have some other maybe financial pressures or issues in our businesses that trigger this kind of realization. But regardless, at least we're here. We're starting to think about profitability. Okay. So you start doing things like tracking your time consistently. You're starting to do a deeper analysis at your project actuals versus what you had quoted. You're starting to look at your past utilization. Where did our team spend their time last week, last month? And was it on the right things? The thing is, at this stage, you tend to be looking in the rear view. How did we do last week, last month, last year, and not really looking forward at what's coming up? You might not know how to do that at this stage. And this is often the stage where people recognize that when they need to do this project profitability tracking, business profitability tracking, that if they don't have the right tools in place, it becomes very onerous and difficult to do. If each of your project managers, account managers, or whoever it may be has dozens of spreadsheets where they're trying to track this, or a dozen different tools that they're trying to do all of this in, it becomes very cumbersome and not very realistic or accurate. So it's at this stage that businesses often bring in a PSA platform, for professional services automation platform, like Scoro, to get control of that and consolidate that data. So that's an important milestone. We're going to level up. And so you, at this stage, you've kind of moved past that rear view and you're starting to employ a more mature way of looking at those metrics to see what's coming. So you're doing things like capacity forecasting to see whether you're going to have capacity to take on that new project that you just won, or whether your team's going to be sitting on the bench. And if you have too many people, what are you going to do about that? So you can make some decisions. You start doing things like project health forecasting. So you can steer the ship if things are going off track and start nudging your clients back on track, right? You start doing things like sales and revenue forecasting. So you can see what's coming in the months ahead. This is where agencies and consultancies tend to get the full benefit of the PSA systems as well. Previously you were using it to automate, to improve your workflows and make your team more efficient. At this stage, you're really able to benefit from the data and the insights it's giving you, using it to forecast and look forward, allowing you to be more proactive in your decisions rather than reactive and just looking at what happened in the past. And at the top end of that kind of maturity, we've got a 360 view on our performance. You're doing things like revenue recognition, you're looking at your recovery, you're looking at tracking how much of your billable work actually gets invoiced and paid. But you also start looking at team performance. So you're able to do that granular analysis at what was planned and what actually happened and what's coming up. Okay. And I've got a separate podcast episode on this with Rich Brett. So if you're interested in a definition on some of this terminology, do go listen to that podcast episode. It's called the Handbook, the Operations Podcast. And the episode was with Rich Brett. Okay. And at this stage, if you've invested in your tech, which you will have, you've got the automated live dashboards and reports that tell you how your business is doing at this moment, and you're not relying on collating dozens of spreadsheets and across a dozen tools, right? You've got that kind of command center. The point of all of this is to show that you go in this maturity journey from kind of very reactive and based on gut feel to being very proactive and data driven. And that is the goal. And again, that is where a platform like Scoro, professional services automation platform, comes in. It gives you one system for creating your budgets and quoting, through to resourcing, and then tracking your projects. So tracking your time, your expenses, your purchases, your tasks, right through to invoicing and reporting on those projects and reporting on your business. And also plugging into your third-party tools. So your accounting systems like Xero, QuickBooks, or Sage, your HR platforms like Bamboo HR, or other tools and CRM systems if you're at a stage in your business where you are using systems like that too. So, of course, the benefit of this is it gives your team a single system that becomes the single source of truth. And it's kind of the way I see it, an operating system for your agency or consultancy. It becomes like the engine to drive your business. And like I said at the beginning of this presentation, Scoro was a platform that we chose at my past agency after looking across the market at a variety of tools. And they had what I consider one of the best UIs. It was web based, which was important to me, and they were doing a lot of work and still are on refining the product. Every month there's new features and updates. So now, what if you're watching this thinking, well, our maturity is at a good level, our systems are in place, and we've got a good visibility on performance, right? So what is next? And that's what the last part of my presentation is going to focus on, the future of operations, of automation, and AI. And I hope this is something that you'll feel excited about. Nearly everyone watching this, I would imagine, probably knows what an API is, right? An application programming interface. It's a way for different systems to talk to one another, to share data, share functionality. But the thing is, it typically requires a developer to make use of that functionality, to code something that we can use and get benefit from. So one of the questions I had asked the audience was who knew what MCP was, right? And almost nobody raised their hand. And that's okay if you don't know this because this term, this tech was only kind of invented around November 2024. So at the time I'm recording this, it's less than a year old and it's only starting to get traction. It means model context protocol. Okay, so the way I explain this is that MCP is like an API layer for our AI tools like ChatGPT and so on. So, for example, with MCP, ChatGPT could pull data from other systems that have MCP as well. So, your Gmail, Slack, your calendar, your PSA platform, for example. So, you can interact with that platform directly through your large language model. Okay. But unlike an API, MCP doesn't need a developer. All you need is a prompt. And at this point, after years of using systems like ChatGPT, we know how to write a good prompt, right? So, why does this matter? It matters because we're coming to a time where we're going to be able to do more with our preferred LLMs. Okay. Not only are we going to be able to get information from our other systems through our LLMs, but we're going to be able to take actions from those large language models. And most excitingly, we're going to be able to do kind of multi tool workflows. So you can ask your large language model to take action or get information across systems. Why am I talking to you about this? And that's because Scoro has just launched their MCP server. So, what does that mean? It means Scoro is now one of those systems that can plug into your large language model, like ChatGPT or Claude. And in fact, we're one of the first PSA platforms to do this. It opens up a whole new way of working with your PSA platform directly through your large language model, right? One of the questions I hear a lot from agency and consultancy folks, especially in operations, is to say, well, there's an AI for everything, for sales, for HR, for creatives, for copywriters. When is there going to be an AI for operations? And until now, the answer hasn't been very clear. But I think this is one of those ways. We're just going to be able to do so much more with the way we work through these tools, through our large language models to orchestrate the work we do. And so I'm talking a lot about this, but I do have a couple of examples to share with you. Okay. So first of all, this is not ChatGPT. This is Claude. Okay, this is the company that originally invented MCP. It also works in ChatGPT, but for testing purposes, we were using Claude. Okay, and secondly, who's Kadri? That's a colleague of mine. So that was the one who took this screenshot and was doing this, recording the video I'm about to show you. So if you take a look at that prompt, we're asking the LLM to summarize the feedback from the client for a certain campaign based on the call transcript that's in Google Drive. We're asking it to summarize the feedback and create action items and log them in the Scoro task. Okay, I'm going to click play on that so you can see that happening. Okay. To be honest, it's not the most exciting video because you're just seeing a LLM tick away. But you can see there it's collated the positive feedback and the requested changes. And now when we go into Scoro, open the task, the feedback is there, ready for your team to action. Okay. So that's pretty cool. But I've got a cooler example, right? So the next prompt we have is that multi-tool example. We're going to ask it to do some things across a variety of tools. So let me look at the prompt. It says, help me assess this web dev project, how it's going. Use data from Scoro, from Gmail, from Slack, and Jira to document the risks and bottlenecks. Okay. And a follow up prompt says, draft an email to the client to inquire about the design direction and schedule a resourcing meeting on Monday. So I have not included the video of this in this presentation because we don't have 10 minutes to watch it tick along. And also, it's super boring to watch. But these are real prompts that have been tested. So this isn't just a pipe dream. It's available to Scoro customers for testing now. Okay. And what I mean by beta is that this is like brand new technology, both for Scoro and generally, right? So every week and every month, there's more and more functionality Scoro is enabling these LLMs to access and actions that they can take through the LLM. So it's only going to get better and better. By the way, I didn't mention security, but you are in complete control, first of all, of even enabling this with Scoro and your LLM. Number two, the permissions you have for your users in Scoro stay intact. So nobody that shouldn't have access to certain financial information can request that through the LLM. And number three, you're in control of what the LLM is able to access from Scoro as well. So you have complete control of what it can access. Okay. So in terms of this presentation, we've looked at resilience and why we need to stop winging it. We've walked through maturity and what that reporting journey looks like as your agency or consultancy evolves and grow. And we've ended with the future, what the future of automation and AI and work is going to look like. So just the last couple of slides from me. First of all, through the handbook, we've started running breakfast sessions on certain topics every couple of months. So we have another one coming up on finance and metrics that matter. So if you're interested in that, please drop me a note on LinkedIn and I'd be happy to tell you more information. Through the presentation, I was talking about business maturity. And this is one of the projects that I launched this summer. It's a way for you to assess where you're at today and what you can do to level up. And lastly, there's the handbook, the operations podcast. So again, this has been running for nearly a year and a half now, and we talk to a huge range of experts, finance, operations, agency and consultancy leaders on kind of success stories and lessons learned. So all of us can learn and benefit. So I do hope you check that out if you haven't already. There's a huge catalog of back episodes across a variety of topics, which I think you'd get a lot of value out of. That's it for me. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.